Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jacques here from the Business Book Club. Very, very welcome to our online event. We are extremely excited to host this event and to have our author of the month, Kim Potgieter, with her latest book, Midlife Money Makeover. Kim, very, very welcome to the Business Book Club and welcome to this event, this online live event tonight.
Hi, Jacques. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Just to remind the folk out there, the Business Book Club, we're a non-profit organization. We host these monthly events. We get our top authors in the country that have written books to share their knowledge with us. We then share that knowledge with you. We also then receive book donations, which we then distribute to libraries and less privileged communities. Up to date, we have been very blessed to receive more than 8,000 books that we have distributed. So we'd like to thank you for those book donations. And if anybody out there has got some extra books lying around, or maybe moving a house, and there are boxes of books, we gladly receive them on your behalf and then donate them to libraries. We know of many libraries in our country that are in dire need of proper books. And the books that we've given have been put to good use. We always make sure that these libraries are in fact properly run so that the books get used for the purpose that they have got to be used for. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Tonight's going to be a conversation with Kim about her latest book. This is her second book. If at any stage you feel that you want to ask a question, please add that to the comment box. I will pick those comments up. Kim and I will have a look at them and we'll answer them as best as possible. So Kim, be ready for those answers. So Kim, without further ado, let's have this conversation about your book, Midlife Money Makeover. Now, this is your second book. You wrote your first book a few years ago, and then you decided that it's time for a second one. What was the turning point in your mind? What thoughts provoked you? What situation did you find yourself in that you thought, well, it's time for a new story, it's time for a different story?
So, Jacques, I help people plan their retirement. So I work with people near, at, and in retirement. Hence, my first book was called Retirement, Get More Meaning from Your Money. And it was all centered around the retirement transition. And then my conversations that I'm having with clients, every single time I'm getting the same message. Kim, I wish I'd started this work earlier. I really wish I'd done this work before. I shouldn't be starting this work now. You should be talking to younger people. So I think that was very much the reason where this book came from. The book came from really lessons that I had learned and then lessons that my clients were sharing with me that they really wanted me to be sharing. So that's why it was younger. And then the second point that has to go with it is I reached 50 in the midlife transition and I realized a lot of important things that I was going through, and I really wanted to share them. So hence why the book now is the Midlife Money Makeover, and it's really aiming to get people to start this journey earlier.
Kim, now in the book you do share a lot of your own personal stories, but was this book was it a personal journey for you as well? I mean, was it a journey that you went on, or was it a journey your clients went on, or something in between?
Definitely something in between. So my main strength, from the Marcus Buckingham Strengths Finder, is learner. So I'm very much this person that loves to learn. I travel the world learning, but I'm not a learner to keep the stuff to myself. I absolutely love sharing it. And for me, I get to share it with clients, but that is only a limited amount of people. So for me, when I write a book, I'm getting to talk to a bigger audience and I'm getting to really share the learning. So definitely, I've gone through everything that's in the book myself. I'm not sitting writing it and say, you know, well, this is what you should be doing. I've actually done all the work myself. And then also from a client's perspective, I've done all this work with the clients. So when I decided to write the book, I wrote to a whole lot of the clients and I said, you know, please can you add insights here? Please can you add insights here? Amazingly, they sent me back responses. So you know what I love, Jacques, it's real. It's not one of these books that we read about, you know, like this famous person did this and this famous person did this. This is real people and what they've done. And I think when you read it, that helps you feel that you can do it too.
Absolutely. And Kim, before we go into the nitty-gritties of your book and you know, see if we can share some of those stories with our audience, what I do find interesting is, you know, your foreword was done by, well, one of them was Chip Conley, who also had the privilege of seeing on stage in the US before. And he's obviously been very instrumental in your journey on this. Share with us a bit about, you know, how did you get to know Chip, and what was your insights and your aha moments about, man, this is what I've got to do? So first of all, did you first decide to write the book and then got to meet Chip, or was it the other way around?
Okay, no, so I decided to write the book. Virtually when I finished writing Retirement, I already had a whole lot more that I wanted to share. And for me, a book is not something, I know some people go away and they go to a retreat and they can write a book. My books really take me years to write because it's the collection of the stories, it's a collection of the insights. So I probably took 4 years in compiling the book. I don't want to say in writing the book, in compiling the book. And I was doing a whole lot of the work, but the one part that I was missing was this part about midlife, the part around this transition. And a friend happened to say to me, you know, what you need to follow Chip Conley, read his books. So I started off reading his books, but I got so excited reading his books because I went, oh my gosh, so beautifully put, exactly what I think. I mean, I don't know if you follow his blog called The Wisdom Well. It's just full of the most incredible insights. Mm-hmm. And I started Googling him, obviously, and I found out he had this thing in Mexico called the Elder Academy. And it's after his hotel experience that he opened this up as his new career. I don't know, have you heard of it, Jacques?
No, I haven't. I do know that his hotel experience, I mean, he was extremely successful with bringing up quite boutique hotels in the United States, and he had quite a few of them. So, yeah, this whole Elder Academy that he's brought up is new to me, but it sounds amazingly interesting, and he's, tell us more about that.
So what it is when he sold all his boutique hotels, he was in the beginning stages of the of Airbnb, and that's what he helped build up. Yeah. But then it came time for
the COO of Airbnb, if I remember correctly.
Yes, exactly. So he'd come in with all his hotel experience, and he joined these younger guys that had all the tech experience. And when it came time for him to leave Airbnb, he was thinking about what is his next career, as many of us do in midlife. And he realized he had so much still to add. So he wanted to combine his life experiences with his hotel experiences. So that's hence why he opened up the Elder Academy in Mexico, which is this beautiful retreat place that you go to. I mean, top, everything that he learned probably from his boutique hotels, Airbnb, he's combined into this more mature place that you go to formulate the next chapter of your life. And basically I flew in, which is an incredibly long flight, and you spend a week there doing all different exercises of how do you work out what you truly want to do with your next part of your life. So he doesn't deal with the money part as I deal with in the book, but he deals very much with what do you want it to look like, what are you good at, how are you going to put this all together. And I went through all of those exercises myself throughout the week, and I found them so insightful. So a lot of that I've shared in the book, obviously with his permission, actually with his blessing, because he's the most generous, he's really got this abundance mindset. So a lot of the exercises in the book, which I call midlife reflections, come from Chip. And I find them very insightful and helpful when you're in this transition.
Wow, amazing. So I find it fascinating that you've actually you compiled this book over 4 years using the stories of your clients, and just to look at how you've actually um, put this book into 4 parts. I've got a little screenshot here which says, you've got a part called pause, then tune in, then edit, and then press play. So that's quite an interesting way of putting it, Kim.
So where the idea came from for me is we all have, well, first of all, we have a story in our head. We all have this story in our head that plays continuously. So I wanted to motivate people or inspire people to think of what is a new story they could have. So it's again like, what is a new song you can have in your head? You can have the same one play over and over and over again. So that's where the pause and edit came in. I was thinking of like a new song for your next chapter of your life. So really for me, these 4 stages are vitally important because you can't play until you've really done your pause. And once you pause, what are you pausing for? You're pausing, you're just taking a stage where you go, okay, let me just take a little bit of a break. Let me get off that hamster wheel and let me think about what it is I want. And that's why you need to tune in. So a lot of this work is very much around self-awareness. If you can't tune into who you are, what you're adding in the world, it becomes really difficult for you to even work out what you want to do in the play part. And then that 3rd stage, and I'm just going through it like high level of the editing, is you need to make space for the new. We've picked up a lot in the years leading up into midlife. You pick up a lot of beliefs, you pick up a lot of habits, and some of them aren't serving you. So it's time to say, so what do I want to edit out? So really that's the editing out. And then once you've done all this work, I mean, you've worked out, you've done the reflections, go out there and have fun. I think we all take the world way too seriously, life way too seriously. And that's for me why the last part of going out there and playing is a vitally important part of the book.
Okay. Yeah, I think I mean, when you start with this in part 1, what I find very interesting is that it's actually not about the money first. It's what you're saying is, where do I fit into this picture? And I guess that's some of the stuff that you brought over from your conversations with Chip. But not just only that, you speak a lot about the conversations that you had with people and giving them the tools of actually figuring out where do they fit in the conversation. There's a very nice exercise that you did, for instance, on values. So how do you get clients to actually buy into this? Not necessarily clients, but how do you get people to buy in when they go, but what has that got to do with my money?
Okay, so I've been a financial planner for over a decade. I really came into the industry very much because I was quite disillusioned. I mean, it was a second career. I came in my 30s to do this as a career. I was quite disillusioned around people that were looking after my money and people that were having these discussions with me, because it was always about my money and how my money could do well. And what I found was missing, I mean, my background, we go back to my 20s when I was at university, is psychology. And what I found was missing is that people weren't connecting life and money together. So very much for me, money is an enabler. Money is an enabler, so I've got freedom of choice, so I can do all of these things. But when I go to somebody and they want to just discuss my money with me and they're not seeing it in the context, I feel for me that's not really empowering, and it's not very real. So the work I do as a financial planner, which is my day job that I do every day, is very much I take clients through this journey of first working out what they want for their lives. Then we work out what they want for their money. But until they know what they want for their lives, I find it's the wrong way around of doing it, that our industry first looks at the money and then tells people what they can do with their lives. So I hope that answers the question. I can give you more details, but maybe you just want to ask me some more questions on that part.
Yeah, when I looked at the dream part, Kim, it typically states there what's your fears. Do you have enough? Will I ever have enough? How much do I need? And those are extremely open-ended questions when you look at this whole money thing. And I guess especially when you're in your 40s, 50s, or even 60s, like how much is enough? And how do people figure that out?
The biggest thing that I think we all do is we dig our head in the sand so that we don't even think about it. We don't have these conversations like you and I are having tonight. We kind of hope for the best. We start out in our careers. We tick how much money must go into our pension funds or our retirement annuities. We hope it's all going to be taken care of, and then we carry on. I'm of the opinion that we need to really be taking an active role in it. We need to be actively looking at all the time balancing. Like, I need to be focusing on my money. I need to be making sure that it's growing. At the same time, I need to be living. I need to be having experiences, because the two kind of, for me, must work together. I don't want to get to one day where I've got so much money left and I haven't got to use it and have life experiences. At the same time, I don't want to have that fear as you talk around not having enough money. So how do you work out if you've got enough money? You're only going to work out if you've got enough money if you kind of know what life you want to have. Because if you don't know what life you want to have, some actuarial scientist is going to say to you, well, you should have 75% of your salary and then you're going to be fine. But hang on, no. I mean, I know what, I'm the only person that knows what it is I want to do with my life, but I need to be able to articulate what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that for people are sometimes it's a hard thing for them to articulate. But when you start creating vision boards and when you put the stuff in pictures, I guess it's much easier for them to do that. But I find that the conversation part, Kim, is quite interesting as well. Before you even get to the dream, is for people actually to talk about it. Sometimes the money conversation is quite hard for people to have, even between couples. Have you ever found that that's true for couples?
Have I ever found it's true for couples? Look, money is that taboo subject that we don't want to have. I mean, unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times when we do talk about money, it's when we're in a conflict or when things haven't been working out so well. So all the time, what I'm encouraging are these courageous conversations around money that we start having just around our dinner table. I mean, I've got 3 children. It's good for me to be having conversations around money at the dinner table with my children, kind of also saying to them, like you mentioned the values exercise. I think that values exercise is like such an incredibly important exercise. As a person, to be clear of what your values are, what your principles are, so that when you are making these kind of decisions, you always stay, you stay aligned with what your values are. So I am big time when somebody comes to see me, I always encourage them to bring their partner with. If they are in a relationship, bring your partner so we can have these discussions. This is not one thing that one partner should be going to do and then just updating the other partner. This is a process to do together. And I did the book like that as well, where I've wanted to facilitate conversation. So I've challenged thinking, and my dream is, and people read this and don't go and read it from the first page to the last page, and it's like a theory book. It's actually a book where they could take any of those reflections and discuss it with their partner, potentially discuss it with their friends, discuss it with their family. And in that way, it will stimulate conversation so that you can really work out what it is for you that works for you. Because every client that ever comes to see me or contacts me wants something different out of life.
But I guess the reason why people don't do it in the first place, Kim, is because it's loaded with emotion. Because we all were brought up thinking about money a certain way, and in the neuroscience community, you speak about it. It's layers upon layers of conditioning of your beliefs around money. So, if you want to understand your behaviors around money, it's definitely relates to the beliefs and the emotions. And I quite enjoyed the example that you had there on page 64 of the type of emotions that it brings up. And I guess, what people could rather do, or alternatively do, is just to sit and feel what money feels like. Well, how do you get them to go and unpack their own emotions with money? I mean, don't people just tell you, well, I love money, or I don't understand what you're talking about with emotions and triggers and all these things?
Jacques, I think potentially people want to discuss it. As much as we have got all these layers, and yes, we do have layers. I mean, just as an aside, our relationship with money forms before the age of 7. And then a lot of it just goes into our subconscious, and we start believing that a lot of the beliefs are reality. We never think about it again, and we just believe that. So when I bring up these conversations, people they are warm to it because they want to get to the bottom. I mean, the whole thing is, isn't it better to have money as our friend than money as our enemy? And when we've gone through this layering, and a lot of what we've layered is absolutely not true at all. I mean, it's just stories we've made up, beliefs that we've picked up on. I think people feel that it's quite a release, that they can actually face up to it. But it does take you being courageous, and it does take you being brave, because when you have to really admit to yourself a whole lot of the stuff, you go, oh my gosh, is this really true? But what's the point of carrying all this baggage? And that's what I'm saying about coming into this second part of life. I mean, be you 45, be you 55. Like, why carry all the baggage with us? Like, let's let some of it go so that we can make space for a little bit more lightness in our lives.
Kim, I've got 2 questions. The first one is, you've got your own money story about how you were brought up, and you share it there in the chapter about the text, a tale of 2 siblings. And, that does play, when I read that story, I was thinking, it's a familiar story. I think a lot of people have that story where you've got folk, and whatever your parents believe about money, transpires into your life. But it's not 100% true, because your brother took the whole money thing differently than what you do. So what's the purpose then even of knowing what your parents did if you and your brother took it differently?
So for me, the whole part of it is the awareness. So I don't think you can necessarily say, oh, well, I'm going to do this and it's just going to change overnight. It doesn't change overnight. But for me, what was really important, and I've seen it with the clients all the time, it's just the awareness around sometimes like where some of the stuff has come from. And if it's not working, that you can change it. So you take my brother and I, who brought up in the same home, similar experiences, yet what we picked up was completely different as 2 children. So we developed completely different relationships with money. But it's really insightful for me to understand where mine came from, and just the same as where his came from, so that I don't think that his should be the same as me. And I don't think that mine is better than his. And I say that because when we're in a relationship with a partner, and that partner has had a different life experience with money to what you've had, yet we come together and we don't know that. And then we start doing things with our own children, and we're bringing all of this into the mix. And then we sometimes wonder why we can't get on the same page. So I'm always encouraging couples just to explore that, to explore where it came from, to explore, what it is and how they see it. And then in that way, for me, you start coming up with this new plan that is ours, as opposed to us. A lot of us, what we do is we've got like blinkers. Our way is the only way. What happened to us is, and I think it takes a conversation to another level, and it also puts you in as a couple where you're actually working towards something, as opposed to pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah. No, and I guess, I mean, that's the whole purpose. When you're in that type of a relationship, it's about unity as opposed to separateness. And I mean, you've got lots of stories about that. I remember the one story about a client where he was working in a mining industry and he was actually doing quite well, but then he was retrenched with one of the one big mining groups. He then actually went to live overseas, or not overseas, up in Africa for 5 years, came back and had no purpose, where his wife, all the time they were traveling, she started businesses. And, when he came back after the 5 years, she had purpose and she had a business and he had none of that. So I guess it's not just all about the money, Kim. I mean, it's not just because I'm assuming that client had enough, but there were other things that were lacking, and you talk about that too.
So it's all very much, I mean, for me, as I said to you, money is this enabler that enables our life. So again, as a couple, and you also go through different stages at different times. So in his particular case, when he'd come back, he had only had one career. He devoted his whole life to being in one industry, so he wasn't as adaptable. So when he came back and he didn't necessarily have that next career to go to, his wife had become agile and she was able to start all new things. So now they were at this completely different phase of their lives where she was starting a new business and he was searching for a new purpose. And again, it's the money, the money is just one aspect. So yes, he didn't have to work because he had enough money, but he really needed to work because he still needed to be adding value. And hence why I wanted to share that story, because I thought it was also important for us to see that we go through these phases at different times, and we're needing to stay agile as to what are different things we can do. In days gone by, we did one career our entire lives. If we look at the new generations, they're doing a number of different careers in their lifetime.
So Kim, what is the request that you get from your clients? What is the most common request? Kim, help me with.
Do I have enough money? so that's the number one question. So I will get phoned up, people will come and see me, and the first thing they want to know is, we just want to know if we've got enough money. And then I'll go, look, how long's the string? How much do you spend? Exactly. How old are you? What kind of lifestyle do you have? Because I see so many different people, and some people have to have a huge amount. That X amount of how much they need is huge, because their daily expenses and their living expenses are so high. Whereas I see other people that really don't need as much because their living expenses aren't as high. So I think that's my big one that I get. And then the second part that I get is people saying to me, please just help me because I don't want to run out. We don't want to be reliant on other people. So I would say those are definitely the two biggest ones I get. And then the third one, I know you asked me one and I'm giving you three, is how do I find my purpose? How do I know what it is I should be doing? How do I know, what it is in this next chapter? So I would say those are the three most common things that I get asked when people come to see me.
That's very interesting. So how many careers do people generally go through in terms of their lifespan from your experience with clients?
So, that's a difficult one to answer because people are so different. But what I have found, I think if we go to older generations, many of them they knew they started in a career and they finished in that career. And they were retiring a lot earlier, in the sense that, remember, they weren't living as long. But people that I'm meeting now are going to, most of us, okay, we're going to live till we're 100. Yet we're having these conversations in our 50s. And what I'm encouraging people to do is to not look at giving up working, giving up earning anything. I'm encouraging people to say, okay, if I'm working in something that I absolutely don't feel that I'm being valuable to or enjoying, maybe I could have another career. And I'm calling this next career in midlife, because that new career could take you up until your 70s, where you could be working. Potentially you won't be earning as much as you used to be earning because maybe you want to have time off, you want to be doing it more flexibly, but at the same time you will be earning something. And I think that is like getting people to think about what is that other career they could be doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same as the one you were doing before.
Yeah, and you actually unpack that in one of your chapters. It's Work Reinvented, if I'm not mistaken, where it's really about running a parallel business, maybe looking at turning your hobby into a business. Is there any of your clients that you can recall that really did well from turning a hobby into a business?
I have quite a few that have turned hobbies into businesses. And I think what the important part is here is, and that's why I do call it a parallel, because what I see some people doing is they say to me, I am going to carry on working and then I'm going to retire, or I'm going to take some time off. I'm then going to work out what it is I want to do. And then what I find happens, and I see it over and over again, they never come back in to work. Because once you've taken a year off, 2 years off, you lose your contacts, you lose your confidence, and then it's hard to come back in. So what I always encourage people to do is that parallel, as you mentioned, to start something small on the side. And when I'm saying start something small, it's the thinking, it's the planning, working out your contacts, but potentially how you could do it, where you could do it. So that you've already got that going actively in your brain. I'm not saying don't take a sabbatical, don't take a few months off. I mean, you deserve it. You've worked for many years. Maybe you want to go back and restudy. But at the same time, I want you always to be thinking that parallel of the other things you can be doing. So it's not like this end, take 2 years to think about what I want to do and then come back in. It's a lot more of a phased in approach to the new thing that you're going to start, so that you keep your confidence and so that you keep your contacts going.
Kim, I've got a question here from Steve Rogers in our audience, who's asking, typically, what is the average age of people working with you to do a midlife money makeover?
So I'd say the average age, and I mean, it started to come a lot younger, because when I work with the retirement, the average age that I start to see people is around about 58. Now that I'm doing the midlife money makeover, it's I mean, anytime from your late 40s, but the people that are coming to me mainly are closer to the 50. And I tell you why. And I don't want to use the word midlife crisis, because actually every radio interview and everything I do, people say, oh, is this about a midlife crisis? And it's not. It's like a whole midlife when you actually just looking at your life and you're trying to recalibrate it, and you're trying to do the work so that you don't have the midlife crisis. You're doing the work so that actually your next chapter can be better. So to answer the question, I would say the person I'm working with the most now is early 50s. They're going through this unsettling kind of feeling, saying there must be more that I want to achieve. And they're prepared to put this hard work in. Because doing my book is not like, as I said to you, it's not a quick read of the book and now it's all done. It's read the book, do the reflections a little bit more, and actually do that process of tuning in and editing and all of that. And that's how you really get the most value out of the book.
And I'm assuming the book is also the steps that you take when you sign up clients, is to help them take through that, where they first, they do their part one, where they pause and then they tune in, and then the edit, and then finally, really pressing the play button to understand, what it is that they come from. Kim, you've got on your new financial plan, you've got a quiz, page 32. Sorry, do you want to ask a question or make a comment there, Kim?
No, what I just wanted to say is, a lot of the work that I do with clients, I mean, as I said, I'm a financial planner. A lot of the work that I do with the clients is not as in this much detail. In the book, you can put way more detail into it, because you can really take people through a process. So when I work with the clients, it's very much a process of, I'm writing a financial plan for them, I'm writing an estate plan for them, and an investment plan for them. But the part that I start with is the life planning. And this book is very much the life planning part. So it wouldn't be at all this kind of detail that I take a client through when I'm working with them, because a lot of this you do on your own. But the part that I work with them is I bring it all together into bringing them a financial plan, an investment plan, and an estate plan. So I just wanted to add that.
No problem. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll go through that in a sec. I'm just referring here to a new financial plan where you've got this money quiz. I'm assuming you put this quiz in because the answers to that were mostly no. And it's also, as you mentioned right in the beginning, it's about lifting people's level of consciousness about what they're thinking. Because some of these questions are, do you know exactly how much you spend a year? Which sounds like obvious, but I'm betting that a lot of people just don't necessarily know that answer. Do you save for retirement? Do you have an updated will? Do you know whether your investments are set up to take enough risk or too little risk? And I'm assuming that, yeah, as I said, you get a lot of no's on these instead of yeses.
Well, that's the whole idea. I wanted to challenge people because so many times people have this vague idea. So you say, oh, do you have enough? I don't know. You go like that. And then they spend so much of their life living in a little bit of fear, or they don't go out and do things that they really wish they could do because they don't know. So the quiz is really there to say, I don't know all these things, but actually, you know what, I'd like to know all these things. So I'm prepared to put in the effort to get to know these things, because when you can answer yes to all those questions that you've got it all right, you know what happens is you're actually able to go and live a life that you want to be living. You're actually able to make choices that normally you can't be making. And I always say it helps you to eat better and to sleep better. And that's kind of the goal of the work I do, is really for people to be living their best lives. And money is part of living your best life. If you can get it in the right place and make sure that it's working when you're sleeping, it really can be a much better plan than you always living on a hamster wheel.
Yeah. And I guess that all comes together when you look at, how do people behave towards money. And I love one of the sayings that I picked out from the book. The goal is not to save a lump sum. The goal is to make savings a habit. And I guess that's the trick. I remember my granny, I think up until the day that she passed away, she saved. She got her little pension. She got money from her savings account, but she still, and it was just a habit. It was never waiting for a lump sum. It was never bargaining on a lump sum. And it was just that continuous habit. And, when she had a very interesting story. I mean, her husband passed away when she was 40 years old. And, he was he received, she received the state pension money. So she had to make do with that. And she put children through varsity. And when she got into the retirement house, they always described her as the rich lady. Not that she was rich or wealthy, but she just always had money. And much more so than any of the other people in the old age home, which I guess just stems from this habit of saving money. And I guess that's something that you can never overemphasize with any of your clients or the people that you've worked with, Kim.
Well, listening to your granny story, which is a beautiful story, by the way, but she learned to work well with money. So many people just, they live above their means. So that's like a huge one of this living above our means. So, and then the other one, and where this whole money and this habit comes into place is, I can't tell you how many people I speak to, because I speak to a lot of younger groups. I love to work with younger people, but it's always, I'll start investing when I get my increase. I'll start investing when I earn X amount. I'll start investing when. And for me, it's about this habit of putting it in place from the beginning. Like, it's paying yourself first. So from the time you work, if you're earning 500 Rand, a portion of that you're putting away to pay yourself first. And if you can get into that habit, when it doesn't matter later in life when you're earning way more, you'll still be doing those same things. Whereas if you're earning the 500 Rand and you're spending the full 500 Rand, let me tell you, when you earn the 10,000, you spend the full 10,000. So it's a full mindset that you need to get into. And so importantly that you get into it, even if it's only in midlife, that you stop and you say, you know what, I'm going to get the right habits around my money, because otherwise it's going to be a struggle all the way through. And really nice to hear that your gran had that attitude around money, that she had enough. And that's also was very important for her in her whole way. I mean, managing to put children through university and all of that. She kind of worked out her priorities. She went without. She knew what it took.
Exactly. And I mean, she had a few hobbies that she changed into money activities, selling chicken eggs and and things like that. But I guess when you've got a vision of doing something, putting your kids through varsity and looking after your children, it makes the goals and the habits easier because they're all linked. None of these things that you're looking at. I mean, hence why you call it a life plan, Kim. I mean, none of these things are in isolation. I guess you couldn't say to me, Jacques, if somebody just focuses on the habits, they'll get it right, because that in itself isn't good enough or the only thing that will take you to living a mindset of abundance.
You've got such an important point here, because so many times if you don't know what it is you're trying to achieve, you don't want to actually make the sacrifices. So for instance, when you know that it's to put your children through schooling, or if you know it's because you really want to get that holiday house where you can get to share times with your family for the experiences, you actually start to feel what it is you're trying to achieve. You actually, when you're in a situation and you think, well, should I buy the new car? Should I buy the new pair of shoes? And you remember, no, I'm doing this for the university education, or I'm doing this because of the holiday house. You don't all of a sudden feel like you're going without. You know what the vision is, you know what you're trying to achieve, and you've got a plan and you put your habits in place to back it up. But when it's, I want to have 1 million Rand, what is the 1 million Rand for? Why are you doing that for 1 million Rand? So you need to put the visualness of the life plan in place, because then that gives you way more the conviction to doing what you've got to do to get where you've got to go.
Kim, so I mean, I want to stick on this subject of habits, because I want to make it practical for the people that are out there and listening to this podcast or to this event. When we look at money habits, and there's a few very interesting ones that I've read. For instance, the one that I really enjoyed is the guy that made a pact with himself, where that every time he bought something for himself expensive, he put exactly that same amount into an investment account, which I think was interesting. And the person who stopped buying cappuccinos took that money, invested it, their daily cappuccinos, and just took coffee from home. What are some of the interesting habits that you've seen in clients that really work? And maybe what are some of the habits that you've installed in your life that you find that has really, really, really helped you in achieving your money goals?
So I'll talk about mine first, because the one for me that I preach, I want to say preach, is because is the one of paying yourself first. I know I've mentioned it earlier, but it's deciding from the beginning that I'm not going to put away what I've got left. So many people I hear, when I'm finished spending, or when I'm finished paying all the bills that I've got to pay, I will put away what I have left. Then you're never going to get into that right mindset. So for me, it's like, before you're thinking about your car repayment, your bond repayments, all of that, I'm going to put away a certain percentage. I particularly chose 20%. I chose it many years ago when I was really young. And I said I was going to put 20% away. Not all 20% goes to retirement, because for me, there's retirement, but there's also my life. So a certain amount is for life and for experiences and freedom to choose, and certain amount would then be for retirement when I'm no longer able to work. So for me, that became a really good habit that I put in place. Likewise, I haven't been that person that believes in putting all their money away and not having experiences with my family. So it's hugely important for me that while my children are young enough and want to do things with me, that I get to do experiences with them and we get to do things together as a family, because having lost both my parents very young, I mean, my dad was 59, my mom was 63, I realized how important it is to have memories. So when you get left money, it's a completely different thing to when you've actually had these experiences and memories with your family. So those would be my two big ones, balancing it, but knowing that I'm paying myself that 20%. It doesn't matter what's been happening. When we talk about clients and what habits that they've put in place that for me are vitally important, it's very much that one of living within your means. You know, the amount of people that I have met who just really go and they live way above what they can afford to, and then they get themselves into these situations. And the second one is when you have a business that you don't put all your assets into your business. I've watched many clients put all their assets into the business, and when something happens like COVID or, you know, I mean, this has been totally out of the ordinary, but then their businesses go down, they don't have any investments to live on or any emergency funds. So very much a very important habit for me to be putting in place would be to be putting some, like they do, put some into their business and then putting some into another kind of investment, so that they know that if one goes wrong, they've got the other investment that they can go to. So I would say that what would be something that I would really encourage people to be looking at.
Great. Kim, I really like your 20% idea. And I also like the idea that you're sort of saying that of that 20%, you allocate a percentage for retirement. In other words, you put that away and you don't touch that. And then you allocate a certain portion. If I understand you correctly, what you're really saying is those are for lifestyle choices, which means, you know, if you wanted to go and have a overseas holiday with a family, or you want to go do a memorable experience that you would actually want to dot down on your life plan, you know, like you've taken us through the beginning of your book. Is that how you do it? Is that 20% then a split of 10%, or does that vary depending on the needs?
So I would say it varies depending on the needs, and it also depends on when you started saving. So for many people who haven't started saving in their 20s, the 10% for retirement isn't enough, and then you have to up it. But if you've started early enough, then the 10% can be enough. Because for me, it's also been really important, and that's something I talk to in the book as well, is that you're your greatest asset. I said in the beginning of learning, so I always allocate a certain amount of money for me to upskill, to learn new skills, to learn from new people, because at all times I realize that I'm my greatest asset. And I should be looking for different forms of income that I can be getting from different places. But I need to stay relevant for that. And in order to stay relevant, I need to be learning. So that would be something as well that I always add to it. In my 20%, there's a portion of money that's definitely going for upskilling.
Okay, so part of your 20% is your upskilling. Kim, and then let's have a quick conversation. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I think it's also important because it's relevant. And you know, so now COVID has hit. Things are ongoing great. I mean, do I have a choice? Do I go into my retirement funds? I mean, what do I do? I mean, do you get that a lot?
You know, at the moment, very much, I get it a lot at the moment with properties. So many people have used properties as their investments, and they've got these properties that they now can't eat. So when we no longer have the income coming in that we used to, we need to find the income from somewhere. And I'm seeing a lot of people are now saying, I need to sell my properties, but they're not worth as much. I can't get as much. How should I be doing it? So it is, again, going back to that discussion around make sure that you spread whatever assets you've got across the different asset classes. So, I mean, having equities, having property, having bonds, having cash. Make sure that it's spread, because when certain asset classes aren't working as well, that you can go into money from other places. But that question of, should I go into my retirement investments? Jacques, it's the last place that you should be going to. So if you've exhausted all other avenues, because remembering you can't get into them if you're under the age of 55, unless you leave your work and you take your pension fund and then you withdraw it and you pay all that huge amount of tax. But you're forever putting yourself completely on the back burner. What I encourage people more to do is to say, okay, so how can I spend less? Number one. And number two, how could I earn more? And that's hence why I'm always encouraging people to upskill so that they can think of different ways. I mean, like you mentioned, your gran. I mean, she went out and could do different hobbies and bring in different streams of income, because if we're going into our investments, if we're going into our savings and we're using that all up, we really are going to be much more challenged. So the mindset change for me is, how do I spend less and how do I earn more? That should be the first place I go to. And that said, I found a lot of people with COVID have left it too late. So what they've done is they've seen they're in trouble. They've dug their head in the sand. It's going to come right next month. It's going to come right next month. So they've gone into more debt and more debt and more debt. And then we sit in this terrible position, because all of this interest that you've got to be paying back, and you can't afford to actually even get on top of the capital, because you're always just paying the interest. And that's when I would say to clients, you need to sell that property to settle the debt, because otherwise we're never going to get out of this. I hope that's helpful.
What's your advice to clients at this stage, or to people out there that are sitting in a COVID position that's not maybe earning what they used to? Are you sort of saying, well, sell assets that you can get, so that you can settle debt and get the debt out of the way? What would your main advice be?
So like I was saying, my main advice would definitely be spend less. You know, often that's what I said. I mean, so I meet people and then they'll say, well, they're still doing this, they're still doing this, they're still doing this. They can't take their children out of private school. They can't do this, they can't do that. And I say, but you have to. You don't have the money. So you need to make the spending changes as early as you can when something like this happens, so that you don't put everything that you've done into a place where you mess it all up. But if that's said, if you can't, then you do have to start selling off your assets. But it's hectic, because you've got to know one thing, Jacques, if that's happening, you better know what you're going to do for many, many years to come. 70s, 80s, you might still be working because you have to be working. But we all do what we have to do for our families. But my big thing is, get somebody to help you that's not emotional. Get somebody to help you go through this process with a tick list, so that you actually have a plan, not just being all emotional and doing this and then being emotional and doing that and then looking around and saying, oh, I did all the wrong things. Like, really get somebody objective to help you with it all.
You know what, Kim, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. And it takes us back right to the beginning of those courageous conversations. I've found that when people get into emotional situations, and money is one or other. I mean, there are many emotional triggers, selling businesses. Those are all very high-end emotional ones. And to get a third party that hasn't got the emotional connection and can just look at it from a subjective way, actually assists all the parties in making the best decision. Because otherwise you get a situation where the emotions just go wild and people get too attached to it. And I think this example that you just mentioned about, you don't have money for private school and now I've got to take the kids, and all the emotions with that go in hand with that, with the disappointment of being able to tell the kids and the kids missing their friends and, losing what they've had at the school. I mean, those are hectic conversations. But money is the reality checker. If there's more going out than coming in, you have a problem. So whether it's your business or your personal life, it's a massive plan. That's why the life plan is so important, Kim, is that if you've got the life plan, you know your values, you're much abler to navigate these situations as opposed.
So I lost you there, Jacques.
No, I'm just sorry, man. I was just saying that,
it's just lost that last part.
No, it was just critical to say that, hence why a life plan, to have that in place before these things happen. One of my favorite quotes is the one that calm seas don't make a skillful sailor. So having those things in place and navigating through this, it's important because they will come again, challenging times.
And that's why what you're saying is so right, because if you can answer questions like, what does money truly represent to me? And you can work out what it is that it truly represents, and then you can work out like exactly what for you would be of your highest value. So for instance, potentially your family is of your highest value. And if you can get clarity on that, all of a sudden, many of the other things like the fancier car or the bigger house or all of that, it is not as important as you thought it is. But if you haven't thought about what money represents, and if a lot of what you do is for the outside appearance, so many times you make a lot of the wrong decisions. And again, also, what have you taught your children? So having those kind of conversations with your children and having these discussions actually all helps you as a family work towards the life plan, so that you all know why you're working towards it. And then you all know what you've got to do in order to make it happen, as opposed to sometimes as parents, what we do is we just want to be these perfect parents, and we want to provide everything for our children. We don't want our children ever to feel any heartache. We don't want our children to go without anything. And then guess what? We're building these children that have got no resilience. We're building these children that don't know how to cope when something goes wrong. And this has been the most example that we've just had, going through COVID, this big what if that messed up so much for us, and then we haven't really had the conversations with our families around when these changes happen, what we all need to do to get through them.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, so we've almost run out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure. But before we say goodbye to our audience, if I was between 50 and 60, or actually doesn't matter my age, but if I was sorted, like there was enough money, I could retire now, what message would you give me? And if I was in my 40s and 50s, and I was nervous. I was nervous about, being able to have enough in the end. If you could just give me two messages, final parting messages, what would they be?
So my first one would be, why would you want to retire? If you've got all the money in the world, there's so much. Look at it more with a wheel of balance in place. Do a little bit of work, do some leisure, do some learning, do some purpose work, do a variety of different things for your retirement. Keep it a real portfolio life where you're combining and doing a lot. So that would be my message. And then again, for the person that's in a little bit of fear and they don't know, get a plan. Have a plan so that you know what money you've got, what life you want, and if the money you've got can enable the life that you want. And when you've got that all in place, you go out and live life, because then all of a sudden you've got money in its right place. Money is now your servant, not your master. And you are able to choose what you do with your day when you wake up. Hence why, even with my book, Retirement, my definition of retirement was really a time in your life where you get to live your unfulfilled dreams, but on your own time and on your own terms. But in order to know if you can do that, you have to have this plan of all these different components, because then all these different components are in place and they're all working towards the same goal instead of them working against each other.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. This thing about courageous conversations, the elements about putting your life your financial habits in place, understanding where you want to go with all of this. The ideas about reinventing your work, and also looking for the unexpected. I mean, thank you for sharing that. And ladies and gentlemen, Kim's book, Midlife Money Makeover, is available on her website. I will send a link with this podcast for everybody afterwards. It also comes with a beautiful journal that supports it, which you could use to help you plan out what your story is going to look like. Because each one of us have got a money story. That's the important part. Money, nobody here on planet Earth survives without money. Money is a survival mechanism, but make sure that your story is a thriving one with money, not a surviving one where you've got money in abundance, you can live your life of purpose. And Kim has given you a blueprint for that. Go out, buy her book. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. Kim, thank you for your time. Thank you for spending it with the Business Book Club and with me. We really appreciate that. And we wish you all the best, with those clients, those stories, and making a little dent in the universe. Thank you for your contribution.
And thank you for letting me share.
Absolute pleasure, Kim. Have a great night. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.